Okay, Aaron, this will be our first show for September of 2022. Uh, Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and Jon Favreau, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co host, Brian Gaughan, and I are recording this week's show on Monday, September 6th, 2022. So, this is officially our pre D23 Expo show, right?
Yeah, and pre Disney Day, too.
Are you ready? Because I fly out to LA in less than 36 hours, and I haven't started packing. I am not ready. This is not going to be pretty.
So you're going to be out here for a while then, even before D23?
We hit the ground on Wednesday. Thursday is collecting our pals Angel and Flo at various airports and checking into our hotel, and then sneaking away to do some daddy duty.
Oh, excellent. Good.
And then the very next day, plunge right in. And then after it's over, and you and I have collected the goods, Monday, getting in some more daddy-daughter time, plus a couple of work-related things I can't talk about yet. And then Nancy and I fly home on Tuesday. But on the other hand, very much looking forward to you and I hanging out at this event. And other than, of course, the big Lucasfilm Marvel Studios panel, anything in particular you're looking forward to at this year's event?
No, I always enjoy the little areas where they have like what new rides are going to be coming out, and or their, what do they call it, the wish list. I remember a few years ago when I went to it, there were all these rides that were going to be at the, I guess, Singapore and other ride, and they just disappeared. I never heard of them from them again. And I have pictures someplace that proves that they were there. And also remember Giant. That was going to be a thing. I have a picture of that too. So it's neat to go to these things and then see what disappears.
Yeah, I mean, a Gigantic was a heartbreaker. I mean, they had the A-Team on it. They had Nathan Grano, one of the directors of Tangled. They had Dorothy McKim, who is a veteran producer at Disney, and they even had Bobby and Kristen Anderson Lopez. They were writing the script. I mean, these are the Frozen people.
It's a great story, and Gene Kelly proved that you could do a TV movie about it, and which was, I loved when I was a little kid, and it still holds up pretty much.
What does a woggle bird do? Yes, it did have its charms, but the deal breaker is they could never quite figure out, given that Jack was supposed to be, a 16, 17-year-old boy. Right. And Ema, the giant at the center of the story, was supposed to be a 60-foot tall 10 or 11-year-old girl. And it was getting a believable relationship set up between those two, coupled with the villains of the film. In fact, that was what was really kind of cool about, if you remember, that setup at the D23 Expo. They had the beanstalk that was supposedly set up in the animation booth. Also kind of cool, until they officially announced the film, they hid the beanstalk. They had it hidden behind fabric. Then after they made the announcement, if you walk by the beanstalk, every so often you would hear the whole fee, fi, fo, and it was like, but those were supposed to be the storm giants, the villains of the movie.
Is there any hope that they may go back to something like that? Because I saw Luck yesterday, and I liked it a lot. I thought it was really good, but the beginning kind of bothered me a little bit, but then it got good, and there are some hilarious parts in it, especially with the cat and the animation of just the cat looking forward and just the eyes moving, and that's a Lasseter thing.
I think you have to look at Luck the way you have to look at Meet the Robinsons.
Absolutely.
There's a lot that I like about Meet the Robinsons. I mean, the middle of that movie's a mess. Too many characters, too much story. But the fact that it sticks the landing, the whole going to ring the doorbell to start your own life, it ends so beautifully and so heartfelt. But I always make the analogy, it's like, you ever watch like an Winter Olympic event where somebody's doing like the ski jump off of that giant slalom
The
thing.
slalom, yeah.
And you watch somebody who in midair is flailing, and it's like, oh, this is going to end badly. And at the very last second, they stick the landing.
And on one ski,
On
too.
one ski. And that's the thing. That's pretty much Meet the Robinsons to me. And we're doing it again, Brian. This is a Lucasfilm podcast, and we are not talking. Okay, so we are now going to actually start the show.
What am I looking forward to at D23?
There we go.
That it has something to do with Lucas. Well, Indiana Jones. I'm hoping they're going to do some announcing there. I'm hoping that's when we're going to get the title.
We will be talking about that on the second half of today's show.
Okay, then I'll put that on the back burner.
Okay, but first we have to get to the news, and the news portion of today's show is brought to you by Storybook Destination, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience every time, please book online at storybookdestinations.com. Also, important to admit when you are wrong.
Uh-oh, what do we do now?
We've been talking on the show about Star Wars Andor, which, by the way, did you see the poster that showed up on social media?
Yes.
Oh, looked really good.
Yeah, there's some Zapruder film stuff going on there. You got to and the poster for D23. Have you seen that poster?
We're going to save that for the second half because there's a kind of a cool detail that keys off to what we're going to talk about.
But the Andor was it was amazing just to see the little things and the little tiny Easter eggs.
Absolutely. But last couple of shows, we've been talking about the supposed 5-year plan for the show. And that's a story that came out of Comic-Con, and evidently that was the info that was shared that, hey, there's a 5-year plan for the show. So I assumed that, that means that there are 5. We're going to get 5 seasons of the show. It's like, well, no. A friend at Lucasfilm who listens to the show, likes the show, reached out and said, hey, the show covers 5 years worth of story.
Okay.
But there's only going to be 2 seasons of the show. And in fact, showrunner Tony Gilroy, in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, went on to say the last scene of this show, our 24th episode, will walk the audience directly into Rogue One and directly into the first scene of Rogue One.
So should you re-see or watch Rogue One before Andor, or should you just wait until, because I remember Rogue One, but I know there's a lot of things that I need to catch up on. So do I wait to see the 24th episode and then watch Rogue One again?
I enjoy Rogue One, so any excuse to circle back on it, I would take, but okay, that's kind of interesting. Hold off until it's there and you can do that.
And then, being at my age, I do tend to forget a lot of things. I do know how it ends, though, with an explosion, right? No, that's in the other one. See, I'm all messed up.
That's okay. We grade on a curve here. Okay, Star Wars Andor begins later this month on September 21st with 3 episodes dropping on the same day. And then going forward from there, there are going to be 12 episodes per season. And as Mr. Gilroy just mentioned, final episode, the 24th.
Are they already working on the second 12 episodes? Are we going to get a year?
Supposedly, Mr. Gilroy has put out the word that he won't necessarily be directing that season of the show. He will be involved. He's the showrunner, of course. But when it comes to season 2 of Andor, he may hand that off to other folks. Now, we've been waiting for them to lock in when Star Wars Bad Batch Season 2 of that animated series will debut. And people were a little concerned when Disney Plus announced its schedule for September and there was no Bad Batch on there. But it turns out, clerical error, they've since corrected. And September 28th, we get the kickoff of Season 2 of the Bad Batch. And
isn't it funny how their clerical errors get us all talking about it?
That's the joy of social media.
Oh, did we forget to tell you? Mm-hmm. And you've been talking about it and wanting to know, well, here's the date.
Yeah. Now, obviously, with 12 episodes of Star Wars Andor, likewise 16 episodes of The Bad Batch Season 2, going to be a very nice fall. Lots of stuff to watch and talk about. There's going to be a slight pause around the holiday season, and then Star Wars goodness picks up again in February of 2023. We get Season 3 of The Mandalorian gets underway at that point.
Oh, really?
I love that all of this stuff is headed to television, but it also is beginning to look like it's going to be a while before we get a Star Wars theatrical release. Rian Johnson has been out there this past week or so because everybody's waiting on when they're going to get to see this next Knives Out movie, which it's called Glass Onion, a Knives Out
mystery. Yeah.
There we go. All we know at this point is it's going to be on Netflix later this year.
And then he'll start on the third one, which will be on Netflix probably next year.
Got it.
So he's busy with that. But what he did say was, well, remember when his movie came out, The Last Jedi, and there was, I don't know where it was coming from, but a lot of the critics seemed to like it. It got, what, a 95 on Rotten Tomatoes.
There we go.
It did pretty well. But then all of a sudden there was all this negative. Well, we know a lot of it was the toxic fanboys didn't like the Kellyanne thing, and then
Rose.
And a lot of people didn't think that Luke should have been a grumpy old man. But still, I mean, I saw it and I kind of liked it. I mean, and I like the casino scene too, which you are right, and a lot of people are right. If we would have lost that, then we would have lost Benicio del Toro too, and I liked his version of Lando Calrissian. I liked his, how that came out. So everybody thought that his trilogy was dead for the most part. But now it's coming out. He's coming out and saying, also Kathleen has come out and said that basically what he said in an interview, Ryan did, I've stayed close to Kathleen Kennedy, and we get together often and talk about it. It's just, at this point, is a matter of schedule and when it can happen. It would break my heart if I were finished, if I couldn't get back in that sandbox at some point. Now, I think that's going to bring goodwill because we know that he can bring in other characters and in another part and give us a really good Star Wars trilogy.
Yes, I'm not a big fan of the casino scene, and don't get me wrong, I love Rose. I think,
I think Rose is a good character.
And likewise, her sister's sacrifice early in the film. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I really liked about this movie.
And I love that they bring Rose back in all the Lego Star Wars things, and she's always a main part of it, and she's a really good part of it.
Well, again, that's what I love about the Lego guys is, hey, you're a toxic male, screw you.
And they play with every toy in the sandbox.
There we go. But that end where you get that battle between Luke and Kylo Ren, and see you around, kid, that was worth my $12. I love that moment. And so when something ends well, ends strong, I'm willing to forgive. But the interesting thing, and again, came out this same week with Ryan out there talking about his new trilogy, which had people going back to talk about The Last Jedi, and they didn't like Luke as a grumpy old man. Evidently, Mark Hamill himself didn't particularly care for this version of the character.
But wasn't Obi-Wan Kenobi basically a grumpy old man too?
You are preaching to the choir here, all right?
So that's why I was okay with it. I was okay with him drinking green milk and having all those, being on that island, and it made sense, especially when you know that he felt responsible for what was going on with Kylo and what was going on with the universe or the galaxy at the time. I mean, wouldn't you hide away too?
We just finished watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, which starts off with Obi-Wan as a broken man. And again, the very thing you were just talking about, the regret about what happened to Vader. Could he have stopped what went on? And so the notion of the same thing, that we have Luke as a broken man. And by the way, worth noting here that, yes, Mark Hamill wasn't necessarily all that happy with the script and the interpretation of the character, but Mark is a complete professional. And Ryan himself said on the first day of shooting, said, okay, this is the vision you're going for, and I'm going to do the best version of that I possibly can. But at the same time, just in this past week or so, Ryan is out there talking about how he had arguments with Mark on the set and, during prep for this thing about what was being done with Luke. And I love this quote. It's like, look, if Mark Hamill is talking to me about Luke Skywalker, I'm going to listen to him. And I got to think about that and argue with him and go back and forth and genuinely plumb the depths of my soul and of what I wrote and figure out if that seems right. But he created the character on screen, but he's Mark Hamill. He is not literally Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker lives as a creation on that screen. He's a myth. And as such, he only really lives in the minds of people who listen and in various ways believe that myth. And I know that was me. So it's complicated, which brings me to the question I want to throw out to you, Brian, now.
Yeah.
Who, in a situation like this, who owns a character? Who gets to decide what to do with that character? I mean, is it the creator? Is it the studio? When fans push back, as they did with The Last Jedi, is it the smartest move to listen to them?
If we listened to him, then we would have lost a lot. I mean, remember George Lucas? He loved Jar Jar. He thought Jar Jar was going to be the character that everybody was going to love. And I think to this day, he still does.
I'm so happy you brought this up, because another thing, by the way, Brian dug up this amazing piece of video for the today's show. It's this wonderful conversation between Robin Williams and George Lucas, and they're talking about why the world hated Jar Jar.
But first of all, get back to Robin Williams. He is hilarious because he's a very serious interviewer. But then when George mentions maybe a character from another pop culture, or Robin will go into that character and he'll make something funny. He'll talk like R2D2, not R2D2, C3PO or Jar Jar or whatever. So it adds this like different element. I mean, it brings you're in it breaks the fourth wall many times. You're in it, you're out of it. You're in it, you're out of it. But with Robin Williams, you're always on a roller coaster. But it's a very great conversation because I've never heard this version of it before. And George thinks that they hated Jar Jar because he was a sidekick.
Yes. But he goes on to say they always did this. They hated C-3PO in the original Star Wars. Comic sidekick. They hated Yoda in Empire. Likewise, they hated the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi. And it's making this movie for kids.
Well, yeah, but also, if you think about it, the Ewoks, they're cute teddy bears, but they're also cannibals. So you got to think there's a dark part of these little guys. I mean, they were actually bringing Han Solo off to make him dinner. So do we lose that point of it? I mean, I never was upset about. I mean, I don't get the C-3PO because I always love the sidekick, because the sidekicks are my favorite part of almost everything, especially if they're of a different culture and things like that. They bring in another element, which C-3PO did. He was more of an elitist. He was more of a butler type of thing that really, he didn't really understand what it was like to be a farmer. But of course he could speak in different languages and do this, that, and the other thing. But did he really know how to, handle the moisturizers? We don't know. But I had never heard that before.
Oh, no.
That's why they hated the characters and sidekicks. So looking back on the second one, Attack of the Clones, and then Return of the Sith, are there any sidekicks in there?
Interesting point.
Because I don't think there is. I think Anakin's a sidekick, but he's also our main character of the whole story. Yet he is the sidekick to Obi-Wan. Or maybe you can switch and say Obi-Wan's the sidekick too.
George does not mention that as part of this conversation with Robin Williams. And you got to wonder, after what happened with Phantom Menace, whether or not he approached the writing of the next two films, taking that into consideration. It's like, okay, let's keep the sidekick off the table. I mean, Jar Jar makes a token appearance in Attack of the Clones is being
Right.
kind. I mean, I think he's in the film for like 30 seconds and then gone.
But he's a senator or something like that, so he's more serious, and he's not tripping up on everything, and he's not his sidekick.
No, definitely.
But then look at the sequels too.
Mm-hmm.
Are there really any sidekicks there? There's pairs, they all go off, but I wouldn't call Finn a sidekick. I wouldn't call Rose a sidekick. I wouldn't call any of those people not even BB-8. I wouldn't call them sidekicks at all, because they don't have the sidekick. They're not there like R2-D2 and C-3PO were in the original, and also the movie that they got it from, The Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
Those were two sidekick characters, the Abbott and Costello type of character for comic relief. But I don't think we see that so maybe they're staying away from the sidekicks because of George's theory that sidekicks kill.
There's something else that George brought up that he said, it's the goofiest characters that got despised by the fans. But he then went on to say that they're into Terminator, and they wanted everybody to be Darth Maul.
Right.
And there's a couple of times in this thing where George says stuff where it's like, accents don't make the stereotype. And I'm sorry, but if we're talking about Watto, or for that matter, the trade commissioners that come across like World War II villains, I don't know about that. I mean, I definitely want to give George the benefit of the doubt. You have heard the story about when George was getting ready to sell Lucasfilm to Disney in 2012 or thereabouts. He thought what would really seal the deal was that if he came to the table at Disney and said, oh, by the way, you can have Lucasfilm, and by the way, here's the storyline for the next trilogy. And Disney still bought the company for $4.25 billion. But at the same time, one of the very first things they did is said, yeah, we're not making those. And then went off, and between J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, went a very different way. Which brings me to Tamara Morrison, who obviously played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones in May of 2002. And think about how we all lost our minds when season 2, episode 6 of The Mandalorian, when Boba Fett came back on the canvas and kicked ass in such a spectacular way. And I think that episode was called The Tragedy. If you went on social media the next day, people were just Boba Fett, and not only that, but Tamara Morrison back in the outfit. And the first show of season 2, where they had that shot at the end where you got to see just his feet walking up to. Oh, I'm blanking on it.
So, Fennec Shan.
There we go.
So, were they planning from that point to bring him back into the fold? Was that Boba Fett? Because I still thinking, and then I watched him again, and there's nothing to tell me. I mean, but didn't he have spurs on too? And then Boba Fett didn't have spurs?
Now I got to go back. Damn. Again, fan community absolutely loved what they saw of, the return of Boba Fett in December of 2020. Now we jump ahead a year to December 29th, 2021, when the Book of Boba Fett gets underway on Disney Plus, and we literally watch him claw his way out of the Sarlacc pit.
And wasn't that Patton Oswalt's version of it?
There we go. Community, wasn't it? The filibuster? There we go.
Yeah, and they only showed on the show, like, what was it, like a minute or two, but they have the whole thing.
Oh, yes.
That supposedly he went up and he ad-libbed the whole thing.
Okay.
But that was coming from himself. That was coming from what he wanted. And it's almost like they wrote it exactly the way that he said it.
Patton has a wonderful piece of Star Wars related stand-up where, if time travel is possible, he wants to go back in time and beat George Lucas to death with a shovel, so the prequels don't happen. And the joke's a little adult beyond this, so we won't go into that. But I was fascinated during that 6 weeks where you go online and you read about the fanboys who's like, this is not the Boba Fett I know.
Oh,
this is not.
gosh.
And what I couldn't help but think about, do you know the Sherlock Holmes story, The Final Problem?
That was the one that he went over the falls.
There we go, Reichenbach Falls.
And then the empty house was the one where he came back.
So you have Sir Arthur Conan Doyle kind of got tired of working with the same character. And so in December of 1893, he writes this story where Holmes is fighting with his arch nemesis Moriarty, and as you mentioned, over the falls.
And it was all third POV of Watson, so you never see them afterwards. So you don't see bodies of either one.
Yep.
But he basically killed them off. Yes.
But the audience just wouldn't accept it. First, he writes The Hound of the Baskervilles, which is set before Holmes's death. I figured, okay, just kind of as a sop to the readers who want the character to come back. And finally, as you mentioned, in The Empty House, he brings Holmes back as a character. And in fact, by 1905, there's a whole book that's literally called The Return of Sherlock Holmes that collects all of these new stories. And in much the same way that Star Wars fans talked about, oh, Boba Fett just wasn't the same after he clawed his way back out of the Sarlacc pit. It's like there were Holmes readers who insisted that, he just wasn't the same after he went.
The same guy, yeah.
Yeah, after he went over the falls. But at the same time, this was an Arthur Conan Doyle, much like a George Lucas, where it's like the difference between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones is no silly sidekicks.
But look at Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe he's not silly, but Grogu is a sidekick. And maybe Fennec Shand isn't silly, but she is a sidekick. So they're going back to what George wanted, but they're refining the silliness of it and making it more relatable, probably. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading into it. But that's why a lot of people like what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing, is that they're bringing back the spirit of Lucas, of George. And they're making these things like they think. But I don't know what the fan community wants, because every time I think that, oh, this is great, everybody's going to love it, now there's all this stuff about, oh, they're ruining our Star Wars. I don't understand about how they're ruining. I accept whatever. See, you asked the question, who does it belong to? I think it belongs to the creator. Because the creator is giving us something and we either accept it or don't. I accept everything. I accept what George did. I accept what Ryan did. I would have loved to seen what Colin Trevorrow was going to do, because I enjoy the experience of experiencing. I enjoy going to the theater. I enjoy sitting in my reclining seats with the speakers in the back. I enjoy being with everybody in the theater because I'm going to clap and they're going to clap with me. It's that experience, and it just brings me in. And whatever they give me, okay, I'll accept it. I'll drink the Kool-Aid, but that's okay. The Kool-Aid is spiked. The Kool-Aid is giving me something I really want. I don't know. Maybe it's just an optimistic view of things, but I have not been disappointed in almost anything I see. That's why my friends think I'm crazy, because I like almost everything I see.
And I think you have a discerning palate when it comes to film. I mean, obviously, as someone who's worked in the industry and has seen as much film as you have, I get what you're saying. You have to give yourself over to the storyteller at some point. Otherwise, the fact that, well, I want the things I want exactly the way I want them, that's not storytelling. That's you at home with your action figures.
Yes.
Well, at this point, now that we've offended half of the audience, tell you what, folks, we're going to take a quick...
Are we going to try to offend the other half?
There we go. Come back in the
part?
second half of the show, folks. So we're really going to offend you. So back shortly.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
As we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to start talking about Indiana Jones. And in fact, Brian shared with me the official D23 poster, and we've got Mickey standing in front of a stylized version of Sleeping Beauty Castle at Disneyland. And to Mickey's left, we have Spider-Man dangling upside down from some of his webbing. And then to Mickey's right, we've got Indiana Jones dangling from a rope, probably above a bunch of snakes.
But that's from that dangling from the rope. That's from the ride.
Well, there we go. There we
Okay.
go. So,
All right.
but we are now officially 10 months out from the release of Indiana Jones 5. It's supposed to arrive in theaters after many years on July 30th, 2023. And as Brian mentioned earlier in the show, we are hoping to get the full name of this film at the Lucasfilm and Marvel Studios panel being held at the D23 Expo this Saturday, September 10th in Hall D23. But just this past Friday, September 2nd at the Hollywood Bowl, as part of his annual Maestro at the Movies concert, John Williams debuted a new piece of music from Indiana Jones 5. And this piece was called Helena's Theme. And by the way, folks, if you head over to YouTube, lots of folks put this up so you can hear the theme early on. And this is supposedly written for the character that Phoebe Waller-Bridge will be playing in this James Mangold movie. Williams, speaking with the Hollywood Reporter, described the Helena character as an adventurous and also a femme fatale. She's many, many things, and she has kind of a lyrical music like an old movie star. Williams also then went on to say that he had just recorded this particular piece of music for the official soundtrack of Indiana Jones 5 earlier that same week. More to the point that James Mangold himself had given Williams permission to premiere the piece at the Hollywood Bowl as part of his Maestro at the Movies concert. This is obviously significant because remember, back on June 22nd, we learned that Williams will be retiring from scoring films once he completes working on Indiana Jones 5.
So he is doing the whole score then.
That is the what we're hearing.
Now with the Helena character, could this be like a backdoor like pilot, so to speak? Because we know that they need to find something to replace Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to bring? And she would be amazing, because I'm sure she's like a wisecracking Harvard probably graduate or something like that. No, Oxford, because she's got an English accent.
You know, I don't know. And certainly the Disney company has to be looking at, I mean, remember, there were all of those stories fairly early on about passing the torch from Harrison Ford to Chris Pratt. The notion that, he would become the new Indy. By the way, that's another thing that Williams dropped as part of the interview back on June 22nd, announcing that, his last job film scoring. He said something to the effect of, well, since Harrison thinks that this is his last film, I figured, well, I could go out too. And it was one of these things where it's like, wow, you kind of buried the lead there, didn't you? It's like, this is Harrison Ford's last movie? And so far, none of that has been confirmed. Harrison's people have not come forward, and certainly Disney doesn't necessarily want to put that out there yet. But at the same time, it's been 14 years plus now since the last Indy came out, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And what did you think of that one?
Well, I loved it until the very, very end. But I thought it was a great film. I loved that John Hurt was in it. I even liked Shia LaBeouf too. I thought the character maybe was a little goofy at the beginning, trying to give him the whole Marlon Brando, but he doesn't have the Marlon Brando feel. But I enjoyed it. My family and I went to it the day it opened, and we had seen all of the three before. And I did not know they were beings from another. What were they were from another
Dimension.
Not universe?
Yes, that
dimension.
Yeah.
I thought they were aliens. Of course, I thought the things in IA were aliens too, but they were robots.
Yeah.
But so sometimes if you don't write it down to me and just give it to me on a card, I sometimes get lost. But I think the whole idea was great because at the time there were all these things on Discovery Channel about the crystal skulls.
No doubt.
And how they were, were they from another world? There's no way anybody could make these skulls out of crystal because it would take them 14,000 years to do it or something like that.
There we go.
And it was a great idea, but I think it fell flat at the very end. But that's not to say I didn't see it 5 times or 6 times or 7 times, because everything else in it was so enjoyable. It hit all the marks I wanted it to hit.
Okay. We're kind of on the same page here. I have also had the opportunity to read Frank Darabont's script for Indiana Jones 4. In fact, folks, I'm going to suggest when you finish listening here today, type in Indiana Jones and the City of God into Google, and in various spots around the web, you can find this script. In fact, the draft I'm talking about was written November 4th, 2003, and even features a story credit by George Lucas. And Frank initially was the guy they wanted. They'd done some amazing work all on his own, and, we don't need to get into the whole what went on with Frank with the Walking Dead thing.
Right, but remember, Frank started by writing Young Indiana Jones.
There we go.
He wrote, I think, maybe a half dozen of them.
He did. And in fact, that's why he was hired in May of 2002. And his Indiana Jones and the City of Gods is set in the 1950s, but the bend on it is that it's ex-Nazis who are in South America who are now chasing after Mr. Jones. And by the way, not exactly far-fetched. I mean, remember, Ira Levine, plowed this same road with the boys from Brazil. And Spielberg himself supposedly suggested this idea seems weird to me because do you remember after Schindler's List came out in December of 93, Spielberg supposedly swore off Nazis as villains in his movies?
Because they were too much the real villains, and he didn't want to make them caricatures anymore.
No, that's it exactly. But again, Spielberg supposedly loved Darabont's script. But the irony is Lucas, who has a story credit in this thing, supposedly had issues. He felt, given that this Indiana Jones film was going to be set in the 50s, the era of the Cold War, that the Soviets would be better, more fitting villains. And so Spielberg and Lucas shelved Darabont's draft, and in August of 2004, they hired Jeff Nathanson to come in and take a stab at Indiana Jones 4. Right from the get-go, Nathanson has the Soviets as Indy's adversaries. David Cope comes in to rework the script in 2005. And the interesting thing, it's David who decides that the crystal skulls are going to be the MacGuffin. And more to the point, the very thing you were talking about Mutt, he's the one who brings Indiana Jones' son into the storyline. And
but didn't Darabont have a son in there, or
he had Marion?
Okay, he just had Marion. All right. I remember there was another, maybe it was a fake script done by I forget who it was, but it was basically called The Son of Indiana Jones or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Indiana Jones and the Saucer Man. There's legitimate drafts in there along with the Indiana Jones and the Monkey King.
Oh, jeez.
No, well, actually, the irony is that one's legit. The opening scene of it is set in a Scottish castle where you have Indy battling ghosts. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's really well written. But for years they tried to get the right mix. And
there was one time Bill Stout was talking about they wanted to make a film about Indiana Jones finding the map that led to Skull Island. Did you ever hear about that one?
That sounds killer. Well, speaking of giant animals, all right. The reason I want you folks to go read the Darabont script is there is one scene in particular that I absolutely love, and I'm going to share it with you guys and Brian right now. So if you go to page 83 of the script for Indiana Jones and the City of the Gods, and it starts off with Marion and Indy, walking through the South American jungle, and the closer they get to the City of Gods, the weirder the environment gets. They're starting to see like hummingbirds the size of hawks or foot-long dragonflies and that sort of thing. But of course, Marion and Indy are walking through the jungle, and as always, they're squabbling. And so here's Marion bringing up Indy's romantic past, and it starts off with that girlfriend, that star you knew, and then Indy's like, well, he's got her. Are you still in touch? And he's like, yeah, on and off. She moved to Hollywood to be a star, and last I heard, she fell in love and married some big shot director. So that's sort of a smack at Spielberg because, of course, that's what happened in real life. But anyway, at this point, Marion freezes in dread, whispering, "Snake." And Indy thinks that she's still talking about Willie Scott at this point. So it's like, pull in your claws. She's a terrific person if you get to know her. And Marion points and goes, no, snake. And Indy looks over and a large jungle snake is slithering up behind him. And rising calmly, Indy scoops the snake up, grabbing it from behind its head. It twines fiercely around his grip. And Marion's stunned. It's like, I can't believe you did that. And Indy's like, oh, I got over my fear a long time ago. People change, Relax. It's just a snake. And he tosses the snake in the foliage and they walk off. And so moments later, the new scene starts in the dense jungle, and men are hacking with machetes with Indy in the lead. And, it's not looking too good up here. This stuff goes on forever. And Marion appears, offers him a canteen, and he accepts it gratefully and wipes his take his hat off to wipe his brow. Like, thanks. We're going to have to backtrack and find a way around this if they want to get the trucks up here. And as before, Marion freezes in dread, seeing something on the ground behind Indy, and she points, stuttering, and Indy goes, what, another snake? Yeah, lady, the jungle's full of them. And Marion's trying to speak, but it's stuck in her throat, and Indy grins, takes another swig, blissfully unaware. It's like, come on, what's with you? You think you'd never seen a snake before. And it's the biggest damn snake anyone's ever seen is rising up behind him. It rears up, taller than Indy now, staring down with him with a head bigger than a horse's. And Mary's like, and Indy turns, looks up, expression goes slack as Marion says, snake. And now this is a description straight out of the script. Okay. And gulp. The snake chomps down on Indy, swallowing him up to the waist.
Oh, my. Okay. The beast rears up, trying to get Indy down its gullet. Indy's legs kick and flail in the air. The snake slams down to earth, maw widening and contracting. Within seconds, Indy's kicking feet are gone. All that's left is his hat, which rolls across the ground. As the final insult, the snake snatches up the hat and swallows that too, then turns and slithers off into the underbrush. Men are running in all directions, snake, it swallowed Indy. And so the chase is on, and Marion literally leads the charge and grabs a rifle and aim for the head. And at this point, the snake slithers up the trunk of a tree and is in its high branches, hissing at the men below. They're aiming at the rifles, trying to get a clear shot, and then the tip of a machete erupts through the skin, and the monster starts thrashing and convulsing as it gets sliced open from within. Indy emerges covered in goo, expecting firm ground, only to find himself in thin air. He tumbles, grabs a branch, only to find himself dangling eye to eye with the snake, hisses, dying, and Indy tosses off a line, something you ate? Then smashes to the ground, and
And he's there shaking, teeth chattering, covered with slime. He looks up at the dead snake at this point. It's like, well, that's not something you see every day. Now, the payoff for this is later that night when they make camp. Indy's still in shock, but he goes into his tent. Kerosene lamp is glowing. He shuffles to his cot, throws back the blanket, and the tiniest snake we've ever seen is slithering across his pillow, and his eyes go wide, and from the outside of the tent, we hear its screams echo from here to Brazil. So, I'm sorry. Just for that scene, I wish they'd made the Frank Darabont version of Indiana Jones 4.
Well, what was the MacGuffin in that one? Can you tell us, or should we just read it?
It's really more about what happens when you get to the city of the gods. And also remember that in this version, it's still ex-Nazis. And
Right.
it's still, the dream of the Third Reich and the 1,000-year reign. And in fact, what happens to the big Nazi in this story, that's half the charm of the Indiana Jones films, is when the villains get their comeuppance, oh, do they get their comeuppance. And Frank really did something of size, something really worth checking out. So again, folks, suggest strongly Google Indiana Jones and the City of the Gods and give yourself something to read in line. Let's see, beyond that, if you're going to be attending the event this year, look for myself and Brian. We will be lurking about with the idea of coming back here with all sorts of stories to share on the next, looking at Lucasfilm. In the meantime, Brian, where can folks find you online?
You can find me online at Geek with Children, and children is spelled CHILDRN, and on Twitter. That's on Twitter.
Okay, cool. Myself, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. I guess I should mention that we also do another couple of podcasts here. We have, of course, Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. We also have Marvelous Disney, which I normally do with Aaron Adams. We had a solo show this week because we're running behind schedule. What with D23 coming up, and kind of the same thing with fine tuning, which I do with Drew Taylor, trying to get one of those out the door before I head off to Anaheim. Tell you what, folks, if you could do Brian and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and recommend looking at Lucasfilm, that would be very, very helpful. Get us some extra ears and eyeballs. If you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would help too. And I think that's going to do it for now. So, Brian, I will see you in a couple of days at the Anaheim
I'm
Convention.
looking forward to it.
Again, folks, we'll be back with a brand new show with all the info we learn at the Anaheim Convention Center very, very soon.